Welcome to another marvelous episode of College Football Nation, hosted by me, Lever KT, aka the Governor of College Football. And as promised, I'm here. I told you guys I will be live in full effect Thursday. And first and foremost, happy holidays to you and yours. Hopefully, you guys ate good today. Spent some quality time with family, maybe family you haven't had an opportunity to see in a while. I was able to go to Mom Duke's house. Mom Duke's always go to the throw down. I was telling y'all a few episodes ago that she always makes a non-vegan meal and then a vegan meal for me and then my Uncle Foots whenever he pulls up as well. So shout out to Mom Duke. She threw down, got to see my nephews. Really had a really good time. But let's talk some college football. We got a lot to get through. You guys know how this thing works. I got a play clock before me. I have to have each segment done before that play clock. If you've seen this episode or seen the show before, you know we extend past that play clock quite often. And to the right, we have our rundown, PTI style rundown, and that'll tell you everything we're going to discuss today. So let's talk about this portal tracker. It's a lot going on with the portal. It's so much going on with the portal, and make sure you guys are following at THECFB Nation on X or Twitter, whatever you call it. I still call it Twitter. It is what it is. Probably will call it that for a while. Before the latest college football news, but more importantly, the latest portal news. I think it's the best thing you could possibly follow to figure out what's going off in the portal. And all of these things I'm about to report to you now came off of CFB Nation Twitter. Oh, by the way, Oklahoma State running back Caleb Hicks has entered the portal. Florida State wide receiver Eugene Wilson has entered the portal. I think we're getting to a point where we're starting to see really significant players. We're starting to see depth in the portal at certain positions. Wide receiver is starting to become one of those positions. Certainly a quarterback, and at running back we have studs as well. Speaking of which, Jacksonville State Cam Cook has entered the portal as well after a 1,616 TD type season. Do not be surprised if you see him in the Big Ten or SEC country. He might be headed towards SEC country, to be honest with you guys. NC State wide receiver Terrell Anderson has entered the portal as well this season, 36 catches, but 5 touchdowns to go along with those catches. Louisville defensive lineman A.J. Green has entered the portal. He had 6 tackles for loss and 4 sacks on the season. Florida State quarterback Brock Glenn has entered the portal. And he's kind of been like an interesting story, to be honest with you. Like, you kind of had the feeling after Jordan Travis left he was going to be the guy. He's going to be like the heir apparent. And they went and got DJU. And then that didn't kind of work out. And he had some opportunities to play. And then this past portal season, they go and get the kid from Boston College, by the way of USF, who was similar with their system. And it had some success earlier in the season. Didn't quite work out. I'm interested to see what happens with Brock Glenn heading into this season. And I think G5, G6 route may be the route to go for him. Ohio, we know everything that's going on. Just recently fired the head coach. Had a successful season this past year. Alleged, and I always like to say alleged just to be careful and dot my I's and cross my T's. Relationship with one of the staffers there. Allegedly drinking alcohol in the office, which I believe he admitted to. So we see them lose a stud at wideout in Chase Hendricks, who had over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. He has entered the portal. And like I said earlier in the opening of this segment, make sure you guys are following at the CFB Nation on Twitter for the latest portal news. I shout out Nino almost every episode, as I try to shout out my guys all the time. But he really does an outstanding job with our Twitter handle. And so does D now with feeding Nino some information. I always looked at Nino as the one that, the YouTube and the Twitter keeps that thing going and keeping news on it nonstop. And Moon, what he does with our website, the CFBNation.com, the best looking website in all of college football, in my personal opinion. But D Now's like the insider of the group. He's always finding out information, I feel like, before everybody else. Let's move on to this Hawaii Bowl fight that happened. And it's one of those things where you wish it doesn't happen. But, when you have ego, you have competitiveness, time to time you're going to get these type of things, but it should never be at this level where it's this form of disrespect in a game which we should be talking about the amazing comeback that Hawaii had, being down 21 points, 4 back against a really good Cal Bears team. Well, I'm interested to see how well they recruit in the state of Hawaii, and then all hell breaks loose on the Cal sideline. And if they can recruit really well in California, that's what I've been saying. With Tosh Lupoi going there, they should be able to recruit well in Hawaii. And also, hopefully, they can recruit well in state and stop letting some of these Cal kids go Pacific Northwest. And will he be able to still recruit out of the Pacific Northwest as well. So I'm interested to see what's going on with Cal after this. But the fact of the matter is, Jimmy Changaha, Hawaii, fought back. That should have been a story. But, then we see California's Kawan Adams and Hawaii's Brandon White begin to mix it up. And then after that, like I said, all hell breaks loose. This is so bad for the sport, especially when we're in the era where we're having a lot of opt-outs, especially when we're in the era we're starting to have some lopsided bowl games. This game was supposed to be everything right with the bowl season, a game that looks like it was going to be a lopsided game. Like I said, Hawaii fought back to get back into this game, and the storyline isn't the game. This isn't what, being in this bowl game is all about. And it's about a brotherhood, and it's about spotlighting a team like Hawaii, and like it just ends in this mess. And this is bad. You look like you got staffers getting rolled on the ground over there, or we don't have a clue of how many people was involved in this, but this just wasn't a good look. And if you're on Hawaii's side, I know the coaches and the staffers and the admin and some of the fans and some of the spectators going to say, hey, they should have just stayed on their sideline. Listen, I don't come from one of those families that, oh, you should have stayed on one of them sideline families. Like, I don't know where you grew up. Where I grew up, the kids that have had the most success are the kids that had a hell of a strong father in the household, and they had a hard-working mother in the household, and they did not use gentle parenting at all. It was tough love because it had to be tough love. My parents didn't care if me and my brother got in fights as long as we didn't start them, but we finished them. But if we got in trouble at school for being disrespectful or we weren't staying on top of our studies, they understood we lived in a volatile environment. So from time to time, you're going to have to fight. So I'm looking at the Cal sideline. All hell broke loose. You're a Hawaii player. You see one of your brothers on that sideline. Bro, you're going to go get him. I don't care what the coaches say. I don't care what the staffers say. You're going to go help them out and guarantee their security. So at the end of the day, it'll be interesting to see what comes of all of this. If players get suspensions for next season, it's difficult to find when a lot of the money is funneled through NIL. But I thought that the story of this game should have been the great game that it was in a season that's been ridden by opt-outs and some games that have really been lopsided. But it's frustrating for a damn good football game to end like this. And I'll say this before and I'll say it again. I don't blame Hawaii and some of those players for running on the sideline to guarantee the protection of their brothers. I don't blame them at all. And I'll never blame them for that. All right, let's talk about Matt Campbell. Been a lot of interesting discussions and storylines about Matt Campbell over the last few days. And what I will say is this. I believe with the resources that were provided, the resources that were available, and Ames, that he did the best that he could with what he had. Well, like when you think about Ames, Iowa, and you start to look at the resources, I think sometimes his teams had the ability to play up. When you look at the roster construction, I remember the beginning of 2024 football season, I looked at the roster construction for Iowa State, and I looked at the state that the Big 12 in with the new teams joining from the Pac-12, and I said to myself, if not now, then when? And I felt like he answered the call, even though it was BTA in that conference championship game a season ago against Arizona State. I still feel like his players competed. This year, you still had players competing. It's just some games didn't go the right way. And I know you look at a loss like, damn, they lost to Colorado. Yeah, that's a terrible loss. I can't take up for that loss at all. But they did start the season 5-0, and then they just ran into some teams. And that's the Big 12 each and every year. Like, there's a couple of teams you have a good feeling for, but there's always teams that kind of come out of nowhere. We expected it, but we didn't kind of know with Texas Tech, hey, they spent money. Is this thing going to work? Because it better work. Because they gave their team ample resources for this thing to work. And that's where I was at with it 100%. So I am a Matt Campbell guy. Now, I know looking at Penn State brass, looking at their fan base, looking at their boosters, looking at their donors, they probably wanted a bigger splash in the coaching carousel. If we could just sit here and talk candidly and speak honestly with one another, they wanted a bigger splash than Matt Campbell. I don't think that that's a secret. Dr. Patrick Kraft wanted a bigger hire. And the reason I am so comfortable in saying that, because there seems to be a little bit of hesitancy with Matt Campbell, but I feel like a few dominoes didn't go in their favor. I think they really wanted Lane Kiffin, but I think they kind of saw earlier on, nah, that's not happening. And I think we started to move the needle to a guy like John Summerall, who was, hey, I'm going to Gainesville. That's not happening. So then you get to look at some guys who you may feel like aren't proven at this level, and then guys who are kind of proven at this level, but the conference isn't as big as the Big Ten or the SEC. But we're talking about the Big Ten right now. So my confusion with this entire thing is I understand the hesitancy. I'm not mad at Dr. Pat Kraft with the hesitancy. I just hope that people are being honest with the hesitancy. Because, yes, you wanted to kind of test the waters and see who was going where. Does Kalen DeBoer want to go somewhere? Matt Rule. It seemed like every guy that they were interested in just started getting contract extensions or they accepted jobs elsewhere. That's where I feel like we were at. The thing that I don't like is reportedly, and I haven't seen the names of the media personnel who did this, but they were bad-mouthing Matt Campbell to Penn State. That's low down and dirty. We shouldn't be doing that. Like, I don't know. If he does something to you personally, maybe, but I don't know. I feel like Matt Campbell is a great hire. He's going to be the type of guy that rolls up his sleeves, get to work, and I know he's going to hit that recruiting trail fast. And you guys may have your quarterback in Rocco back, depending if he wants to go there. But I believe 100%, without a shadow of a doubt, that a guy like Carson Hansen, who played at Iowa State and will fit that moxie of what's going on in Happy Valley, would be a great fit at Penn State. I truly believe that. Let's move on to our next segment. We're going to talk about Kirby Smart a little bit. And something caught my eye with Kirby Smart recently because he's really frustrated. And he publicly has stated that, players who are entering the transfer portal and making NIL announcements during this playoff run that they are on is kind of a distraction to the team. And I understand his frustration 100%. And Jalen and I have had a conversation a long time ago. And I want to revisit that conversation. I wish Jalen was here to revisit that conversation. And our conversation was something along the lines that when you're in high school, right, and you're big man on campus in high school, and, you 5-star, you're blue chipper, or 4-star, even if you're a high-value 3-star, right? You're looking at this, and then your school and everybody's like, yo, this kid has the ability to make it to the next level post-college, whether that's NBA, NFL, MLB, whatever. I think a lot of times in college football, what happens is they go to a team because that team has a lot of clout. That team is able to get them ample NIL money so they can take care of their family while they're in college, and that is important. But I think a lot of times you go to these places that are clouted, and you go to these places, like I said, with that clout, you go to these places that have a name for themselves, but you don't realize entering winter workouts, before spring camp, you're looking at the roster, and you could be a quarterback, bro, and you like 6th deep. You know what I'm saying? You're buried on the depth chart, right? I think that's something that a lot of people don't pay attention to. So we always caution people like, hey, I understand if, your proximity to home is important. I understand if you want to be with a championship contender, getting that NIL bag, all of that stuff is important. But if you getting quality snaps earlier on is important, make sure you're going to a team or university is going to give you that ability to compete. And maybe it's for now competing for nickel corner. And then, hey, we'll see what we can do. But we'll get you ample snaps at nickel corner from time to time. And then maybe you move your way up to being on the outside or being the starting nickel corner moving forward. I think more teams need to focus on that because while Kirby Smart, I agree with you 100%, I think it's Class E. I'm not going to say Class less. I'm going to say it's Class C to make these announcements after your season has conducted, like we're seeing with some of the players at Louisville and other universities. They waited till the season was over, made their announcement. I think it's classy to do that. But I won't say it's class less to do the opposite if you're buried on the depth chart. But I will caution those players, make sure you make the right decision. Why? Because we don't have a late window portal window this season. You got January 2nd and January 16th, even though people are entering it. No deals will be signed to the 2nd, though. It will be like free agency, and we will see poaching and tampering, and announcements will be made earlier on. I can guarantee you that. So Kirby Smart, I understand it, but at the same time, if they buried on that depth chart and they're climbing and they're trying to get there and they feel like that they're doing the right things, and sometimes these people don't always have the best, people in their ear because they're used to having, whether it's yes people in their ear or they're used to them being that big man on campus that we talked about in high school. But let's move along to something I found really interesting. I ain't gonna lie, it pissed me off a little bit. So I want to read verbatim what Keyshawn Johnson had to say about the USC and Notre Dame ending this rivalry. I may go overtime here, pardon me, because we have to cover this appropriately. He says this: I don't know what the F is going on with our athletic department. This is quoted as well. We got people in here that are not Trojans. That don't know anything about being a Trojan running our athletic department. We got a head coach that knows nothing about being a Trojan. Johnson said, why don't we just not play football? How about that? We're not going to play Notre Dame until possibly 2030 is what I'm understanding. That doesn't make any sense. I grew up on the Notre Dame USC rivalry, and I'm not one to go in on my athletic department, nor am I want to go on the USC football coach. But if I can remember correctly, I had Lincoln Riley saying, well, I don't know if I want to play that team in the future. Y'all ain't going to be here in the future, especially if you keep missing these playoffs. You're not going to want to be here in the future. I promise you that. Here is my issue with people like Keyshawn Johnson. Keyshawn Johnson covers the NFL. I'm not sure how in tuned. I would figured he would be pretty well in tuned and in the know of things going on with university or things going on at the collegiate level. But also, what I didn't read from that rant that he had, and rightfully so, I understand it, he bleeds USC. What I didn't read from that rant is him making the comparison, and yes, in the 70s and the 80s, we can argue early 2000s, what this rivalry means. But to me, I'm going to be honest, when I think about great rivalries in college football, I think about the Iron Bowl. I think about the big game. Damn, I miss Bedlam this year. Right? I think about the Civil War. Those are the games I think about when I think about rivalries, not saying that USC and Notre Dame aren't a rivalry. I think about the Red River rivalry, but I kind of place that there because it's an important rivalry. You think about the drive, the event is outstanding, but these are middle of the season or towards the end of the season rivalries versus the last game of a season type rivalry, at least as of recent. And while I do understand this frustration, I'm not sure if this has been communicated to Keyshawn Johnson. Maybe it has been, maybe he don't care, but I'm going to communicate this to you. Why in God's name would USC schedule a match with Notre Dame when Notre Dame has an agreement with the College Football Playoff Committee that if they're a top 12, they are guaranteed to be in the College Football Playoff? Why in the hell would you schedule them on your schedule? Because believe it or not, Keyshawn Johnson, USC outperformed this year, in my opinion. They did a grand job. Lincoln Riley did an outstanding job in a conference that is really difficult to win it. They did an outstanding job this year. A couple games go their way. The Illinois game go their way. And I know, if it was a fifth, we'll all be drunk. We all know that saying, right? But they had a couple of the Notre Dame game, I do have to blame some of the play calling from Lincoln Riley. But that game could have really went the other way. But why in the hell would you schedule a team with that type of agreement? Because now if you're looking at, 11th seed USC or 10th seed USC, and you're looking at 11th seed Notre Dame, who's getting in, buddy? Notre Dame is getting in, buddy. So why in the hell would you put them on your schedule? I don't get it. I understand the rivalry means so much to you. And it means a lot to a lot of us if they can continue the rivalry, but there are more important rivalries, brother. And if Notre Dame has this agreement with the CFP, the hell with them. I'm not putting them on our schedule if we have any chance of making a college football playoff. Why? Because if it's between us and them, they're going to choose them. Just like this year was between them and Miami. With that agreement that they had that starts next year, if it started this year, Miami would have been out, even though they won a head-to-head. That's why you don't schedule a team like Notre Dame on your schedule. I respect the hell out of Lincoln Riley and that administration for not scheduling them on a schedule with that type of agreement. I'm off my soapbox now. I'm done with my rant, and we definitely going into overtime. My apology. So best fits. Round 2, and this will be a continuous thing as more and more people start to enter the portal. I'm kind of fast with this since I went over on the last few segments. Carson Hansen, I said this one earlier to Penn State. Nicholas Singleton and Keyshawn Allen are both leaving, right? Huge vacancy there at running back. Matt Campbell already know what Carson Hansen can do, and I just think that fan base will love him there. Dylan Edwards, I think, is an interesting guy because he's kind of a tweener. You got to know how to utilize him. He reminds me of a guy back in the day, and I do compare quite a few people to this because there's just tweener guys, and you got to know how to use them. Eric Metcalf, who played with the Cleveland Browns and Atlanta Falcons, you have to know how to use these guys, and I would like to see him go, with a creative offensive coordinator who will know how to use them. If you're looking for vacancy and availability and opportunity, NC State, with Hollywood Smothers entering the portal, there will certainly be an opportunity there. But for me, I'm going to go, even if I'm not, even if it's a R, a 1A, 1B type situation at Auburn, or hell, even 1C, you're going to get your opportunities on third downs and in special teams as well. Go to a place like Auburn. If they can, get that offensive line situated, that in that veer and shoot scheme, you're going to have space to be able to create. And especially if you can get a dual threat guy in a portal at quarterback. And I know one that played with Alex Golish a year ago. That'll be really interesting. And then Nick Marsh is another guy I'm looking at. He's got that prototypical NFL size when you think about wide receivers. And I hated to see him not reach his full potential in East Lansing because I thought he could have. But if I'm him, I'm looking at the type of season that Chris Braswell just had and Joy Hazel's offensive scheme. And if I'm him, I'm calling up Josh Heupel, say, hey, bring me to Knoxville. And I think that would be a great fit. I think that would be an outstanding fit if Nick Marsh went to Tennessee. So best fits, that's round 2. I try to get through that a little bit faster. All right, let's go and talk about this Pinstripe Bowl. This Pinstripe Bowl is going to be really interesting. This is a game between Penn State and Clemson, and this game may not matter to most fans. It matters to me 100%, but it matters to these programs who are trying to head into the 2026, the winter workout, spring camp, summer camp, fall camp, and get their teams ready because the expectation that was set forth by both of these programs was thought to be by a myriad of people to be in the playoff this past year. I certainly thought it. I looked at the return of production. I looked at the roster construction. I said, there's no way neither one of these teams are out of the playoff this year. But, it is what it is. Sometimes these things happen, right? So I want to say this game is close. I know our friends out west believe that this game is going to be close as well. But at the end of the day, my thought process is this. The opt-outs for Penn State are out of this world. And when I tell you they're out of this world, I'm going to just give you a few examples. Nick Singleton isn't playing. Offensive guard Vega Ione, who's really good, isn't playing. Defensive back Zane Durant isn't playing. Safeties Akee Wheatley isn't playing. Freshman defensive end. We know about Chaz Coleman. He's been rated like one of the top guys in the portal. This offseason was going to enter the portal, and a lot of us believe we can see him at a place like Ohio State. And then DB, A.J. Harris won't be there. Elliott Washington won't be there. Ethan Grunkmeyer, we don't know if he's planning on leaving in the portal, but he does plan on playing in this game. I know events like this matter to Clemson. I'm not saying they don't matter to Penn State. And I know that Dabo and his staff, after a really disappointing season, are working really hard to make sure they bring this one back to Clemson. So I got Clemson winning this game. Not going to go into great detail because, like I say, I went overboard in a few of these segments. And so I need to be able to have more space to talk about these later segments. So one of the segments I wanted to talk about is this the best portal class ever, right? Because this is a discussion I was having with, was it Boone and D now or was it Jalen? I don't know. We do college football shows so much. We were live Sunday, live twice on Monday, live Tuesday, live yesterday with College Football Showdown, live today. Friday and Saturdays will be upload days, so we're still going to be able to give you guys content. And then Sunday I'll be live again with this show. But I was like, is this the best portal class ever? And then once you start to really deep dive and look into this portal class, you start to say to yourself, yes, it is. And maybe it isn't fair to say so, only because of it only being one window this year. But even though in the introductory years of the portal and of NIL, the late window one was kind of like you really didn't get a lot of stars. And I believe earlier on, Addison, who went from Pitt to USC, was one of those bigger late window ones. But we got Chaz Coleman, Brenda Sorsby, we got DJ Lagway, Dylan Rayola, Byron Brown, who I talked about earlier, Carius Kern. We got Devin Tompkins from USC, Omarion Miller, we talked about him on the show before. Nick Marsh, we talked about him earlier. Rocco Beck, we talked about him earlier. Amarius Williams, Toby Osu-Sanami from Kansas State, Hollywood Smothers from NC State, Terrell Anderson from NC State, Benjamin Brahmer from Iowa State, Jabril Rawls from Florida State, Josh Hoover, right? Jontez Williams, DeAndre Moore. It's so many great players. Eugene Wilson, I can't believe he entered the portal. Chase Hendricks, we mentioned him earlier. Jay Crawford, Boo Carter, Kenny Minchie is a guy. Marquise Johnson, who I thought would probably have a better season this past season at Mizzou. But when you start to list some of the names that are in this portal, and the fact that we still have 8+ teams in the playoff, there's only going to be more names to enter the portal. AJ Harris, Aiden Childs, there's only going to be more names to be added to that portal. So in my opinion, yes, this may be the best portal class ever because it's so early on. It hasn't officially opened yet. We got roughly 7 or 8 days for that. So I'm thinking to myself that this portal class is about to be absolutely amazing, and I truly can't wait to December 2nd because it's going to be chaotic. And when I say you guys going to have announcements ASAP, they'll be ASAP. I said it earlier, I said it again. Make sure you all are following the CFB Nation on Twitter for all your portal needs, all your latest news. Make sure you have it saved somewhere in your favorites, thecfbnation.com, and just continue to rock with us, man, because I promise you in the offseason, that's when we like to perform. We like to turn it up a notch. In season, it's too easy to make content. But yeah, in the offseason, when you got to be a little bit more creative, we're going to certainly turn it up a notch. So let's talk about this SEC outlook. And we look at the 2026 year for the SEC, and with the current model of the playoff, at least being at 12, we don't know what it'll be 100% next year. With strength of schedule mattering, I think before the SEC didn't get that clear with the College Football Playoff Committee, I don't think we've ever seen them go to this 9-team portal schedule. I truly, in my hearts of heart, do not believe we would have seen it. I just can't imagine it because, that 8-team schedule was difficult enough, and I know a lot of people had issues with SEC and their non-con schedule. Now teams are trying to keep up like, holy crap. Greg Sankey and company just dropped a bomb on us the day that they announced they was going to a 9-game. But here's where they really took it up a notch. Not only are we going to go to a 9-game conference schedule, and not only are we going to have college football and the College Football Playoff Committee in a chokehold other than Notre Dame and their little agreement with the College Football Playoff Committee, but, also we're going to play that 10th, power forward game or Notre Dame game. And that's where it's going to get truly interesting because you have that piece right there. And once you start to look at strength of schedule, don't be surprised if we see our first, 8 and 14 make the pool next year. Don't be surprised because the schedules that they have to play is gonna be amazing. Also, familiar faces and new places is one of the catchphrases for me when I think about the 2026 outlook for the SEC. We got Ryan Silverfield, Coach we was able to interview at American Media Day this past year. He's now in Arkansas. He left Memphis. He's now in Arkansas. John Summerall, who was at Tulane by the way of Troy. He's now the guy in Gainesville. And we've seen the success that he had at Tulane last year, getting up to the college football playoff. What does that look like? We know that your first year as a head coach, it's all getting what you can get in the portal, develop whatever talent you have left, figure out the pieces that you need, because you're going to have people like Eugene Wilson enter the portal. You're going to have players like DJ Lagway enter the portal. So the work, they should be trying to get deals closed behind closed doors right now as we speak. Will Sign is now at the helm for Kentucky, and this is one of those ones where I wasn't crazy about the hire. Do I think Will Stein is an outstanding coach? Abso-freaking-lutely. But I'm a Mark Stoops guy. So what does that look like? I think we got a lot of moving pieces. I think Vanderbilt, yes, post Diego Pavia. What does that look like? But I think with Barton Simmons and a guy like Clark Lee, guys who are, Vanderbilt, through and through, I think we're going to get a crazy conference next year and a highly competitive conference. I remember coming into the season, you say who was the weakest team in the SEC. A lot of people said Mississippi State. But, damn, they was like a game away from being bowl eligible this year. So I think you got to look at that. You got to look at a team like Vandy who went 10-2 this past season, didn't make the playoff. Texas, 3 losses, and played a really tough schedule, didn't make the playoff. So you start to look at that. My thoughts on the SEC moving forward next year is that this schedule is crazy. It's going to be really difficult to keep up with, and don't be surprised if they are the darlings of the playoff heading into next season because their conference schedule is going to be ridiculous. So that is our show. I was going to do a mailbag. Chat's been crazy lately. Wasn't super crazy today, so I'll save that mailbag segment for the next show. As I always like to say, there are no more victories in the sport that survive and advance. That's why college football has the greatest regular season. Until next time, y'all take care. Happy holidays to you and yours. Hope you guys enjoyed your day. I hope you guys enjoyed this little bit of college football today. You all take care.